All right. Good morning. Some more rocking out as we enter into this podcast this morning. This is Gridiron 360. I am Bill. With me, as always, Mr. Dave.
All right.
So what we're going to do today, recap NFL Week 1. And we'll talk a little bit about the games, what happened, what we saw, what surprised us, what didn't, what we we'll go over what we made on our picks and how that related to what ended up happening in the game. And later on, we'll talk a little bit about week 2. What's shaking this morning, Diggity Dave?
Oh, trying to recover from first full week of all things football. It was nice to get the NFL cranking again and get some new activity going. It was, I would say it was an interesting week, and I am excited to talk a little bit about it and see kind of where this roller coaster takes us.
Yep. I mean, just like we did with the college after week 1 and really fantasy too, there's maybe some overreaction.
Sure.
I will admit I'm a part of it because there was a couple of things I saw that, man, you can say I'm overreacting because some things I saw that we'll get into, the Patriots and the Saints, man.
Yep.
It's, man. Yeah. We'll just say, yeah. So where do you want to start? Well, let's start with Thursday Night Football. Your Bears that we spent some time last week talking about. Starting the season with the Green Bay Packers coming. In case you don't remember, there was a 46.5 over-under on the game, and Chicago was giving Green Bay 3. You actually went 27-14 Bears. So the Bears would cover, and they would be under the spread. I went 27-23 Green Bay. So the Bears wouldn't cover, and we'd be over. Final score, 10-3 Green Bay. So,
well, I will say
the Bears didn't cover, and it was way under.
Yeah. What I would say is that if you were struggling to fall asleep ever in your life, watch a replay of this game. Holy cow.
Well, here's the thing. Really, I feel like outside of last year, because we do talk fantasy football.
Yep.
And one of the things that I would seem to trend constantly for Thursday night football games, really, in my mind, prior to last year being an exception, it always seemed to be a dud game. Thursday night football games, you were wary of starting guys that you had on your fantasy team for a Thursday night game because it always seemed to be a dud game, whether it be because it's a short week or whatever. It just never seemed to turn out to be high scoring. And now, again, that's sans last year. Last year, that narrative changed completely because there were some Thursday night games that were very explosive.
Yep.
So here we are, fast forward to the first Thursday night of this year. And are we going to see that trend again where there's some, you can never predict, but Thursday night football might be a little bit of a dud. I don't know because, like you said, it was a snooze fest.
Yeah, the offenses were not clicking. Question, I guess I'll kind of take it from two angles. What I saw from a Green Bay perspective, it was kind of interesting to me. There really was some struggle in the play calling. Aaron Rodgers did not look comfortable. Now, mind you, both teams, so you can start chitter-chatter about this, were two of the teams that did not play their starters in the preseason for a vast majority of the preseason, if not all of it. Aaron Rodgers was expected to get time in the third game against Oakland. That was where the field was a mess, and they shortened up the field. They ended up not playing him. Obviously they're trying to go with a new offense. Where it was interesting to me was there was really Green Bay had 2 drives in the game that were impactful, and basically were the points that they scored. And Green Bay came out, and the Bears were putting pressure on them. I'm not shocked by the performance of the Bears defense, and I don't think anybody really is. It almost seemed, the question was going to be, when Aaron Rodgers wants to call his own plays, is he going to do it? And in that first drive where they scored the touchdown, it was, I believe, the beginning of the second quarter or the end of the first?
They had like negative 12 yards in the first quarter. We're doing nothing offensively. And it was right at the beginning of the second, the first drive. All of a sudden, it's like, whoop, flip the light switch on. Aaron Rodgers is healthy and he's back.
Yeah, and he made some nice passes down the field. It was clear the Bears were not going to allow them to run in this game. But what was interesting was it disappeared again. That was it. It just disappeared on the drive. To give you an idea, I mean, you're talking about a Green Bay win where they only had 250 total yards of offense, 47 on the ground, and only 203 through the air. Rodgers was sacked 5 times in that game. And while Khalil Mack didn't get to the quarterback, his compadre on the other side, Leonard Floyd, had 3 sacks. Actually, I believe when 1 sack was removed. He had 2 sacks. 1 sack was removed for a penalty. You'll see that Khalil Mack was all over the place. Their tackling up at the line was exceptional. I think Roquan Smith had a very nice game. Trevathan had a nice game. But Rodgers, kind of did his thing when it was critical. They got the Bears on edge. The Bears' offense was a mess, even though they outgained Green Bay in this game by 24 yards. They had very, very similar. Their rushing yards were 47 for Green Bay and 46 for the Bears, which was very surprising to me. Green Bay beat them. Their defense, everybody's kind of high on Green Bay's defense. There's a big contingent of that. The Bears were inept on offense. The thing that really I saw offensively, Trubisky did absolutely nothing to quiet the criticism that he's gotten over the couple of years for just kind of being more of a game manager and making bonehead plays at bonehead moments. There were some passes he threw that could have been picked. What I saw that was very surprising to me on the offensive side of the ball was I thought Nagy, who is known to be a very good play caller, his play calling was not good in this game. So I don't think they set the offense up. As an example, I'm really high on David Montgomery. I'm still high on David Montgomery. I think you're going to see a change in the way that they run this offense next week, and I think he's going to get more touches. But he was the second fiddle to Mike Davis, and Mike Davis did nothing. So between the play calling, Trubisky's inability to get into rhythm, and some of the poor passing plays, the Bears were in it all the way throughout. It was pretty much 7-3. Then Green Bay put on another good drive and ended up with a field goal from Mason Crosby. And then the Bears had actually 2 chances to go down the field and just couldn't get anything going. I mean, this was 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. The Bears probably made what I think was a mistake. And as my brother is also a Bears fan, I texted him when they didn't go for the 51-yard field goal. That's also not going to quiet the feelings around the Bears in their kicking situation, because that would have put them at 7-6 with a lot of time left in the fourth quarter. And in reality, they would have had a shot at just going down and trying to kick a field goal instead of having to push for the end zone. Then Trubisky throws a terrible interception to former Bear Adrian Amos in the end zone. I look for 2 things. One, Green Bay was not in rhythm, but I saw sparks of Aaron Rodgers of old. Certainly looks healthy with zinging the ball. And I think the Bears offense will rebound. It's just to the level that they will rebound. What we really learned in this, if anything, is that the Bears defense is for real. Going up against Rodgers, Bears hadn't lost a game, I think, it's some crazy number where they had only allowed a team to 10 points. So this was just ineptitude. I watched it from end to end. It was brutal football.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought Aaron Rodgers, like you said, struggled, but struggled early, only in the first quarter. I think, to your point, I don't know that he changed the play calling in that second drive. I think maybe LaFleur did at the pressure of Aaron Rodgers. Like, man, this ain't getting it done. I could see him being like, either you make the right play call or I'm going to make it. Because he came out and marched down the field. Now, I have Devontae Adams, had a very under his average type day. But I will say he is still Rodgers' number one. You got to understand that he's going to get all the attention because outside of Aaron, he's the offense. And he was targeted plenty of times. He was just covered, and it was some of them were tough balls. I have no worries going forward with Devontae Adams. He'll be solid, and Aaron Rodgers is going to get better. I do think I'm not trying to overreact with the Green Bay defense. I don't think they're world beaters. I don't think they're the Bears defense, but I do think they were much improved from what I've seen in the past. Certainly from the defensive front, because in my mind, Trubisky, I don't know. I don't want to say he's not good, or maybe this wasn't a good draft pick. He just didn't look comfortable. And I give more credit to Green Bay making him uncomfortable than his talent, than putting in the fact that his talent may not be there. I think he'll be fine. You did mention that Nagy, the play calling was bad. My question to you is this. I get the play calling was bad, but then why after the game was he was like, offense sucked? Well, if you're the one calling the plays, then, what's the problem? Like, maybe adjust your play calling.
Yeah, he has last year, I would say we benefited greatly from his play calling. And, given that I've had year after year of horrid Bears coordinators, and the coaches that are picking them, he said it. He said it. I mean, he went back and looked at the film, but he came out on his press conference. It was probably Friday morning. I forget exactly which day. And he said, he goes, I got to do better. I got to put him in better situations. So he owned it, and everybody knows whenever
obviously headlines just give you our offense sucked.
Yeah, and when he talks about the offense, understand he is widely known to be the play caller. He knows that he always says that it starts with him. The Bears, they were out of sync. Now, so here's the thing is the questions that I had about both of these teams going into the game, I still have those questions.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
We don't really know. That's the problem. Nothing got answered.
Look, that's the score tells you that. There just wasn't enough there. I do think the Bears defense looked good. I'll tell you something. And again, we are in Atlanta, so we Georgia Tech's here right in town. Athens is an hour and a half up the road. Mm-hmm. This is a UGA town. Roquan Smith looked everything he did in that national championship game against Alabama. He, especially at the beginning of the game, I mean, that guy is something. And then to know you have Floyd and Mack and then all the other pieces, but to have those guys, just those two, Roquan and Mack, man, that is something. I mean, that's really good. I'd love to have them on the Giants, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears got to figure it out offensively. They were without their tight end, which is a key piece. Their starting tight end, Trey Burton.
But even if he is there, like last year, he was serviceable, but like, Allen Robinson looked good. Hopefully that continues, but I think they need like more than a tight end that's, more than just serviceable.
I think in order
for a guy like Trubisky, okay, he's not Aaron Rodgers. You got to give him a talented weapon in tight end.
Yeah, well, you got to give him that. But you also, I mean, the running game was non-existent, and the running play calls were not good.
And this whole David Montgomery train you're on, I get it. Let's not jump off the train yet. It's early. He had one play, which wasn't really a good pass, and he made a great catch. Other than that, he didn't see a lot of snaps, and when he was borderline non-existent. So we'll see if that changes. You were pretty on point with the Tariq Cohen thing, as you should, of being a Bears fan. That he was out there a lot, but he wasn't in the backfield.
No.
He was everywhere. So, and he looked all right. So that's somebody to think about. But this whole Montgomery thing is a wait and see. Like you said, we don't know. And on the other side of the ball, where was Aaron Jones? And what's going on with Jamal Williams eating a lot more than we expected of Aaron Jones's snaps because they didn't run the ball nearly enough. You think they would to set up the pass with Rodgers. But, and maybe that's a product of the fact that Chicago's got a great run D. But, man, Jamal Williams saw the field a lot more than I expected. Yep. That's a concern from a fantasy perspective for Aaron Jones owners. So I don't know.
I just I know what the Bears defense or offense is supposed to be because I did see it last year. I mean, there was definitely flaws in it. We weren't sure about a Green Bay's offense. I think we saw flat performance from both. The question now remains, and this has got to be solved in the next couple of weeks for both teams, is this really a product of not playing in the preseason, and are we seeing some preseason type football? I'm not saying we are. This might be what we got in either one or both of these teams, but I would say certainly with Aaron Rodgers, the likelihood of that happening, but it didn't seem to me like they could even when they had those big plays, that they had an identity on offense.
No, because it was just like, there was a big play to Valdez Scantling and the touchdown that he threw was to Jimmy Graham, which, and I told you, I was putting a DFS lineup in FanDuel for that single game. And, though he wasn't the cheapest, he was definitely on the cheaper side in terms of Jimmy Graham, but I wasn't about to put him in. I have no faith in that guy, and there he goes, catch a touchdown. Now, I'm sure you'll see more of that because it's Aaron Rodgers, not because it's Jimmy Graham this year. So, but he's still someone I wouldn't have faith in. So, to your point, it wasn't like they were hitting things smoothly. That one drive in the beginning of the second quarter, they went whoop, right down the field with it was 5 plays, I think.
Yeah.
So, it was a dud. So we'll move on. I think we spent way more time, but that's because it's your squad, and I want to do that. So let's go to the 1:00 games on Sunday. We'll start with the Baltimore at Miami game. Okay, so this game, Baltimore was giving 7 on the road to Miami. It was a 37.5 over/under. You picked
I picked Miami. I thought it was going to get an upset.
Miami 17-14. So obviously, the Baltimore wasn't going to cover and we were going to be under. I picked Baltimore 21-13. By the way, we didn't touch on that with our Thursday night picks. I think I was a little bit closer. I mean, I had the win.
That was my alter ego.
Yeah. But I also 21-13. So I picked Baltimore. What was it? 7.5 to cover, but to be under the spread. The final score, 59-10. Baltimore. College football score, my friend.
Yeah.
So I was on with the call of Baltimore and covering, but I was off with the over-under. You were off altogether. So, Lamar Jackson, great day. He is certainly the hottest name, if not overall, from a quarterback perspective on the waiver wire for fantasy football this week. It was something. The guy went crazy. The rookie, Marquise Hollywood Brown, cousin of Mr. Crazy, AB, showed what he did when he got balls from Kyler at Oklahoma, man. I mean, he is fast. And couple that with, do you have the stats up? What did Lamar do rushing the ball? Because I don't think he did a ton rushing.
He had 3 carries for 6 yards.
What about throwing the ball?
Throwing the ball, he aired it out. He was 17 for 20, 324 yards, 5 touchdowns, took 1 sack. And, I think that's 158.3. I think that's a perfect passer rating if I remember what the perfect number is.
I think it is. It's right on the edge. It's right close. It's 158 something. Okay, so, everybody that's like he has a bad arm, he's a runner, That was not the narrative today.
No.
And, from a backfield perspective, I have Mark Ingram on a fantasy team. Last minute, I threw him in one of my lineups in lieu of Damian Williams because I also have Fournette and Chubb in that league. And so I was leaving those guys in. So I put him in. Damian Williams had a pretty good day in fantasy in our league, but Ingram dropped bombs.
Yeah, what I really liked out of Ingram was he ran with an attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, the burst on him, and we kind
know
of
him as a banger, not the speed burst guy.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes from we were talking about this a little bit offline, something that I think matters. You look historically at Alabama running backs, and if you go to the Mark Ingram era and before, Saban is known to beat the pants off of his running backs and run them for a lot of carries. And so they struggle sometimes in the NFL. I mean, they kind of have almost a couple of years, Derrick Henry being an example, a couple of years of NFL miles before they even get to the NFL. Mark Ingram has been a change of pace, a split carry back throughout his career so far, and now kind of got an opportunity to run for himself. He looked fresh. He had burst, ran through some tackles. I really liked what I saw to him, and as excited as you can be about Lamar Jackson, I have some level of reservation about his ability to replicate, not necessarily what he did, because that's an incredible game, but to be able to consistently do it.
But again, he only had 3 carries. Don't get it twisted. Lamar Jackson, they switched from Flacco, who's a throwing quarterback, to Jackson because of the running ability. Sure. That is part of his game that they're going to incorporate, and they didn't even scratch the surface, and they didn't need to. So I get what you're saying, but look, I saw this kid the year that they were supposed to march into Death Valley and knock us off in person, and we won by the skin of our teeth. We ended up going on that year to win the national title. But I watched that kid in person. I've seen Michael Vick in person. This is a different story, Speedway, but this guy's much taller, can see over those big uglies on the line. Sure. He could chuck the ball downfield, and when he gets going with that run, and even if he's not running now, and he's able to just use those legs to scramble and buy time, I don't know. I think people are, still a little wary. I think you might still feel, and it's funny, people are still worried it might be RG3. Guess who got in at the end of that game, went 6 for 6 for 55 in a TD? RG3. So Miami sucks, right? But that still doesn't change my mind. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have, and it may not be a long career, but he's going to have some years. I could see him at the beginning of next year being a top 3 fantasy football prospect quarterback.
I could. And again, I don't want to discredit the performance, but it's this overreaction week opportunity. What I guess I want to say I was somewhat surprised in, everybody's been saying, and I think for rightfully so, the talent and clearly some of the moves they've made, that Miami was playing for a top draft pick. Okay?
How can you do that game 1?
Right, that is what is really discouraging.
You can't do that game 1.
They did.
You think they tanked that game, or you think they just? I think they suck.
No. I think they suck.
I don't think the coach or the staff or the players intentionally tanked that game. We heard about this thing after, how people were asking to jump ship from Miami. They were asking for trades after that game. No, don't listen to me, people. Listen to me, Dave. The Miami Dolphins were not asking to be jettisoned. Kenyon Drake was asking to be jettisoned.
No. I listen, and that was going on before.
He is not happy. He's had problems, like you said, in the past with what's going on there with his workload. And let me just take a quick look. Kalen Ballage had 5 carries, didn't do anything with it. Kenyon Drake only had 4, and he's supposed to be the starter. So if you don't think that if he had a problem with his workload in the past, and now this Balaj kid's getting more carries, he's being grumpy, and he's getting salty, and he's airing his dirty laundry for the media to pick up and have something to talk about. Again, I do not think that it was the Dolphins asking to be released. I think it was Kenyon Drake asking to be released.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I can understand your opinion, but you said it was a college football score. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, the margin of talent is not from worst to best team 59-10. I
agree.
And understand, like, we could say we want about Kenyon Drake and all that, and I don't disagree with you there. But the simple fact was they weren't going to run. It was 21-0 in the first quarter. It was 42-7? 42-10 at halftime. So,
I know. I'm not disagreeing.
This game was out. I guess my point is, you're at home, and getting this done to you at home against it. We're not talking about an all-world team walking into this year.
The New England Patriots.
Yeah. I mean, and to me, a score like that at home indicates quit. Now, I'm not telling you the game plan. Certainly, a first-year coach is not going to go in and tank. But if you're asking me whether the mindset of that team is a professional football team ready to get it going, I don't think so. I mean, think about it. Listen, what does trading your left tackle, your best offensive lineman, a week before the season starts, what is that? What message does that tell your team?
Their best receiver. Not that they have great ones, but Stills was the best. Devontae Parker was always supposed to be. I know he showed up a little this week. I wouldn't trust in that. So Stills was the. I don't want. Let's change best to most productive of their receivers.
Yeah. So right. So I'll say this. I'm in no means downplaying what they did. Baltimore is a dangerous team.
They are.
And Lamar Jackson, kind of just what we were talking about with Trubisky. Was Trubisky quieting the naysayers? Lamar Jackson shut the door in everybody's face. In this game.
Well, and here's the other thing. The AFC North, look what happened to Pittsburgh. I mean, we thought going into this, the top 2 in that division would be Cleveland and Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh and Cleveland, either which way. And then it would probably be Baltimore, and then it would probably be Cincinnati. Right now, after week 1, again, let's not overreact, but the 2 best teams in the division are Baltimore, then Cincinnati. So it's funny. It's funny how the NFL works out, but different than college, where every week really matters. We have a long season, so that things can change in a week.
Let me just, I'm going to throw this out here. I've said this to people for several years now, and I'm not saying Baltimore's this team, but I just want you to caution yourself. At week 5, okay, at the end of week 5, there is going to be a darling in the NFL, okay? A darling. An oh my God team, they look so good, this, that, and the other, that is not going to go to the playoffs and is going to do bad at the end of the year. Again, I'm not saying it's Baltimore, because there's going to be tons of examples we're going to go through right now where we can have this conversation. But my point is, the NFL can change and fluctuate. We don't know, like anything we talk about last year, it's not quite like college football where it resets. But think about it. Every year there's been a team from worst to first in the NFL for the last 8 years, something like that.
Yeah,
last year there was 2 of them.
The years of when we grew up.
Yeah, you can turn the league around. So certainly Baltimore, you've said this before, Baltimore is always going to have a very good defense, even when they trade away their guys.
They're sound defensively.
Zadarius Smith is gone, Suggs is gone,
they were good.
They still crank.
They were good.
Right. So this team was not, in my mind, ever an afterthought. They were not the bottom of the barrel, and they weren't close. They were closer to Pittsburgh and Cleveland, in my mind, before the season started than they certainly were to Cincinnati.
Sure.
And even Cincinnati, and we'll get into that game a little later. I mean, so you never know how this thing plays out. But I'm going to talk a little bit about reserving judgment based off of the competition that they play. Baltimore's good. Don't misread what I'm saying.
They've got their defense is going to be solid, and they have a good running back, and their quarterback has
showing
different dimensions. You're going to have
to.
Which one are you going to try to take away? And they'll try to go the other route. And And here's another thing. Mark Andrews, the tight end, great day. People were, he was somebody that people expected more out of when he came in the league. And beginning of the season, certainly for a fantasy perspective, I think I might have even said it. Somebody to keep an eye on, maybe not to draft. But the man went 8 receptions for 108 yards and a TD as a tight end. Okay, he had the most receptions of anyone on the team. Okay.
He also, which is very important, he had the most targets. He caught all 8 of his targets.
Yes, he did. So great efficiency. But then you got, the new kid we said, Hollywood Brown. Now, keep in mind, he had a great day, 147 yards, 2 TDs, but he only had 4 catches. Okay, so a lot of production on those catches, but if he gets 4 targets every week, he's not going to have the same stat line. So, but he is another weapon. So you're right.
Well, you look.
You're
I
right.
mean,
they're going to be dangerous.
If you think about this from a balanced perspective, this to me was what was so impressive.
Paul Johnson, baby.
What is so impressive to me is you've got Brown who can take the top end off the defense. You're then throwing underneath, so you're protecting your quarterback with the underneath with Andrews. I mean, Mark Ingram was stellar on the ground. Watching this, they hit, because you look at the amount of plays they ran, they hit on so many plays.
Yep.
The NFL is generally not a touchdown every 3 pass kind of league, but they did it. And listen, there's no downplaying that in any way. I'll admit, I'm alarmed by Miami because you generally, even when you hear teams are bad, I saw quit. I did.
Yeah.
Whether you can talk, I don't care who said they wanted to be traded or not.
A lot lately,
but they quit. And on an NFL team at home, we're talking college though. That's different. We're done college.
We talk it all, baby.
But in the NFL, that is not an MO. And again, we're going to talk about Cincinnati a little bit later, and that's an example of another team that was at the bottom of the barrel and did something a little different.
They had a little grit. All right, we're spending some time on these, so we'll try to zip through a little quicker, but that's okay. We're having fun. I'm having fun. It's a nice day. We're in good spirits all the time. So the next game, Los Angeles, the defending NFC champs and losers of the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, travel to Carolina to take on Cam Newton and the Panthers, or the Christian McCaffreys.
Yeah.
Let's see. So to run down the pregame line, it was the Rams giving Carolina 3. It looked like it was a 50-point over-under, if I'm reading correctly. Yep, 50 points. You went 24-17 Rams, so they would cover, and it would be under. And I went 35-21 Rams, so they would cover, and it would be over. Final score, 30-27. So they didn't cover.
It was a push,
And they went over. Yes. So you were a little bit closer in the score, and I got the over. Let's talk a little bit. So what you go first. Rams, Carolina, whichever side of the ball you want to start on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with the Rams. Probably some interesting happenings was Brown getting the ball as much as he did versus Gurley. But Gurley was incredibly efficient, which was kind of interesting. But Brown definitely got the touches, got the 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, so he
kind of looking for that balance.
He got those the in close touches, which for again, we do everything here. So from a fantasy perspective, Gurley did look nice, but you do want to see him get work inside the in the goal line area.
And Brown ran for almost 5 yards a carry, so it's not like he ran poorly and everything was a 1-yard run. So he ran well. So I guess the point is in the backfield there was some sharing going on there, which that has kind of been, especially from a fantasy perspective, but just what kind of Todd Gurley are we going to get this year? Everybody knows about his skills, but they also know about his injuries, and so how is that all going to play out? And I don't know that this really told us anything. I'm not necessarily even saying that that's going to be the way it's going to be for the rest of the year. Some of this might be to get Gurley warmed up, save him a little bit, if they don't need to. Now, this game was never, though.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's my thought, is that they don't want, if they have a chance to make a run at the end of the season, they don't want to run into the problems that they had last season. They were fortunate to have a guy like C.J. Anderson, and a credit to their offense and their offensive line, because I think Anderson's a good back, but he looked great spelling him Gurley last year. Yep. So I think you took the words out of my mouth. That's because they also drafted the Henderson kid, which from a fantasy perspective was, he was a guy that people were, thinking about drafting and stashing, a guy that in dynasty leagues that you might want to take because he's young for futures. But he only saw 1 carry and 0 yards. Yep. So, it was a bit of you saw that Malcolm Brown got a lot, but I think it's exactly what you said.
Yeah, and I think what we saw from the quarterback perspective on both sides was definitely trying to knock off rust. They weren't terribly efficient. Both of them had a sub-75 quarterback rating. You see Goff went 23 of 39 for only 186, so not as high-flying with a touchdown and a pick, while Cam Newton went 25 of 38 for 239 and only had a pick and 3 sacks. So to me, what I took out of this was big shocker. McCaffrey is your superstar on offense. Certainly, I think has stepped in front of Cam Newton at this point. I mean, they had this conversation on a talk show, and I mentioned it in our fantasy. Is only in the last it was a long time. Guys that have run for 100+ yards and had 10+ receptions. McCaffrey has 3 of the 4 times that's been done. Did it in this game. Scored 2 touchdowns on the ground on 19 carries for 128 and had 11 targets, caught 10 of them for 81 yards on offense. I mean, what I see in the Panthers is, and
he didn't, like, the thing with McCaffrey to me is he gets this type of workload, and it's not workload where he's like, he gets hit. It's not like he's, stepping out of bounds all the time or just going down or, just got one guy. He gets hit by a lot of dudes, and he's
always
that type
fresh,
of workload.
But he's always fresh.
He always looks, that's it.
He looks fresh.
He always looks fresh. Oh, God, I like him.
Note to Jim Harbaugh, look at the genetics. Play your other quarterback.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
So this offense is going to be run around him. Cam Newton is lucky to be able to have a guy like this that can kind of try to help ease him back into, I guess, a little bit more activity as a passer. Where I see this Carolina team's got challenges going forward, though. You've already got injury talk with Greg Olsen, who's kind of going to patrol the middle of the field, and they just don't appear to have good deep threats. The Rams, on the other hand, were not able to get deep a lot in this game, but they still have deep threats. So to me, I see the Rams kind of just easing into what I expect out of them. I expect a little bit better work from their defense, so that bears watching to see how their defense plays over time. I think the Rams are getting started. Carolina, they got to figure something out on the outside. They got to get a go-to receiver, and they got to get a guy that can stretch this field, because the more and more this becomes the McCaffrey show, the more and more they're going to key on him. And, yeah, he's going to get his touches and he's going to get some yards. But Cam Newton's got to be able to beat some teams for this team to take a step and compete with New Orleans.
Yeah.
And everybody else in the NFC for that matter.
Yeah, that's another thing you just touched on. Their defense, they need to wake up. We know it's a much better defense than what we saw. But, for Aaron Donald, he had no sacks. He had 1 tackle.
Yep.
McCaffrey carried the ball 19 times. I know Aaron Donald's a D tackle that is like an edge rusher, so his game is to push the pocket back, get to the quarterback. But you said it. This offense right now is running through McCaffrey. So why isn't he keying on him more? If you have to slow down your rush because McCaffrey's getting the ball, you're talented enough. Maybe you need to work on the run stopping of that game. I don't know. They need to wake up. It was surprising to me that Carolina and again, it wasn't even Carolina. It was like the kids. It was all McCaffrey.
Yep.
It's like DJ Moore did a little bit. What's his name? Not Curtis Samuel, a little bit from Greg Olsen. He's getting old. Cam Newton certainly didn't look outstanding. He was what did we say? 25 for 38. So yeah, I mean,
but they were playing from behind most of the game.
That's
too.
Cam Newton, though. He is not an accurate passer. I'm sorry.
No, but where he's going to get big passing yards is he's got to get downfield at least a couple times a game.
Yeah. So I mean, it was. You said it again there at the end. A lot of these teams, and we'll get into the New Orleans game much later, but a lot of these teams need to get better because they looked like they came out and just picked up where they left off. So next game, one of the games that we had talked about in our fantasy cast from last week, that was one to keep an eye on for the players involved, and thought that it was going to be really pretty explosive on all counts, was Atlanta traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. The Vikings were giving the Falcons 4. It was an over-under of 48. You took the Vikings 28-24, so pushing over the Falcons with and going over. And I said 35-31 Vikings, so that, too, is a push and going over. Final score of that game was 28-12 Minnesota. Man, the Falcons do not look very good right now. We had talked about Dan Quinn taking over the defensive play calling again, and from what we heard, or what I at least heard, is that was happening. But I had also said last week that it was going to be a great day for Thielen and not a dink and dunk type day, so that Diggs really wasn't going to be very effective. I was right on that count, that Diggs really didn't do much, but Thielen didn't do much either. It was the Dalvin Cook day.
Yep.
And we talked a lot about him, a lot of expectations. We like Dalvin Cook, as a lot of folks do, and great day from him. I have to be honest, I thought the offensive line for Minnesota was very good, and that helped him tremendously.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing of the day is Minnesota's defense from a couple years back was the Minnesota defense I saw on Sunday. Not that they weren't good last year, but they had a couple games where it just kind of surprised me. And it started at the beginning of the year when I expected them to pick off from the year prior when they looked outstanding. I thought their defense looked good. Devontae Freeman for the Falcons. I drafted him in a league because I went 0 running back in the first round. He's done. I think he's done. Matt Ryan didn't look great. Julio caught a touchdown but didn't do much. But we kind of figured that Minnesota was going to cover him up. Calvin Ridley had a solid day, but it was solid. It wasn't great. And the only reason it was not bad is because he scored. So,
yeah, I mean, what I saw that is kind of, I thought Atlanta was going to have to throw. I thought they were going to be a little more adept at throwing the ball. My biggest concern, Falcons defense, I didn't expect much out of them. This game got out of hand early. It was 21-0 at halftime. I don't know. One, they can't run block. That's for certain. I didn't see any good run blocking, but I don't know whether they can pass block well enough.
No.
I clearly see that Atlanta's going to have to put points on the board, and they're going to have to be a throwing offense, which is what I expected and why I said I'm not a believer in Atlanta as a competitive team, but I am a believer in them in fantasy because I think that's what they're going to have to do. I think it only exemplified that need to do that. Now the question becomes whether they can do it. I think Julio's going to get his targets. I think Ridley is going to get his targets. But can they do it without a running game? Ito Smith came in and ran for 5 yards a carry. He had 6 attempts on 31 carries.
But it's Ito Smith.
Right. So the Falcons have more problems on offense than I thought they were going to have. I'm not totally shocked by this. I mean, in Minnesota, on the other hand, I mean, you've got a quarterback that only threw the ball 10 times. Yeah. They didn't have to. So that kind of took Thielen out of the game. I still think he's the focal point of the offense.
Yeah.
Besides the running game, they're going to use this running game to protect Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
And they're going to go to this in big games because that's where Kirk Cousins struggles. So,
I think last year, especially giving him that big contract, they were putting too much on him.
Yep.
And Dalvin Cook was banged up. But I think they were putting too much on him, and they were airing the ball out. I mean, yeah, he only threw the ball 10 times. He was 8 for 10, super efficient. But that's what you need, and not that you need 10 passes. You're not going to be able to do that all year.
Right.
But you need to make it a run. Have it. Let your defense do their thing. Run the ball on offense. Control the game. And when you need him to be a game manager and go to the air, then you go.
Yep. Again, big things I learned is the Falcons are not a great team, and they are going to have to pass the ball this year, I believe, if they can keep Matt Ryan upright. And Minnesota has got a running game now, and that's
will
a big...
get smoked by New Orleans if they don't get something right.
Yep. Yeah, they will. That was it was I was not shocked at all by how that played out. I thought the Falcons would be able to try to keep it a little bit closer, but they couldn't.
No. So let's not stay too much on that. Well, the last thing I do want to say is Matt Ryan's stat line, 304 and 2 TDs. I think a lot of people expecting with Cutter back that he, from an NFL perspective and a fantasy football perspective, his game would try to get at least, maybe not to the year that he was MVP, 2-3 years back, but at least much closer than he's been in the past year or so. And if you really look at it, he threw the ball 46 times.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And he had 2 picks on top of it. So not great. Not great. I think and they were throwing. The expectation was you would probably see that in Cutter offense, more attempts, but that's just, It's not great. So, next game, the Buffalo Bills traveled to MetLife Stadium and took on the New York Jets. The Jets were giving the Bills 3. The over/under was a 41. Dave, you took the Jets. No, you took Buffalo.
Yep.
17-10. So the Jets weren't going to cover, and you were under on it. And I took Buffalo 28-27. So the Jets weren't going to cover, and it was I took the over. Final score 17-16. So the Jets didn't cover, and it was under, right? What would I say? No, it was.
Yeah, it's under.
Yeah, it is under. So you're the winner of the day on that one. Well, go ahead. Start us off. What did you think about that game?
I mean, I saw a lot of error-filled football on offense. The Jets, understanding this game, the Jets were up 16-0, so they choked away the lead. Josh Allen had a better second half. As you can see, he led didn't lead. He was second in carries, but 11 for Gore, who was largely ineffective with only 20 yards. Allen was 10 carries for 38 yards. Singletary was 4 carries, but had 70 yards on the play, and his long was only 23, so he was effective when he got a couple snaps.
Especially with we didn't know what was going to happen with all the backs leaving, LaShawn McCoy, all the things going on there.
Yeah, I think the problem the Jets are going to have is, again, they're very similar to the Carolina, and that they got to figure something out on the outside. Now, granted, Jamison Crowder had a very big day for them, who had 14 receptions for 99 yards, but 14 for 99 is a very, very low average. They've got to be able to push the ball downfield. They couldn't. Longest toss of the day for Darnold was 19 yards.
You can say Darnold.
I just like it. He sounds French. I don't know.
You can do it. It's your thing.
So, but he had to throw the ball a lot. Took some sacks. The thing that I guess I saw was when they were scored their touchdown and then they went for 2 was, and they need a kicker, which obviously they brought in Sam Ficken, I believe now is their kicker now. Because they went with the Vedvik experiment, which I think it's the Minnesota, right? They're still chewing on a 5th rounder over that one.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is, if they can't move the ball downfield, they finally went to Le'Veon Bell. Both the touchdown and the 2-point conversion were both passes to Le'Veon Bell, and a great snatch out of the air on the 2-point conversion for him. They need to run this offense through him at this point, and they've got to figure something out on the outside. Josh Allen was very clunky for a lot of this game, but yet you still saw his ability to make plays. So he kind of has that dimension to him.
Yeah.
Buffalo's defense was okay in the first half, much better in the second half.
Yep.
So they got to get some pass rush, elevated, which will help that team. Obviously they got 4 sacks in the game, so that's kind of where they got better as they came down the stretch. I think this is 2 teams trying to figure themselves out. Don't have all the weapons necessary to truly unleash every dimension of probably the offense they want to run. And it's kind of a wait and see. Their defenses were okay, but again, I saw a lot of errors, a lot of bad judgment in this game from the quarterback position at times. So it's really hard to tell. Is the defense confusing them, or are they not making great plays?
Number one, they're both second-year quarterbacks. Number 2, it's first game of the year. Number 3, I kind of expect that even later in the season with the 2 teams like this. It's the Jets and the Bills. I was very overzealous now looking back on my 28-27 over prediction. I should have known better. This is not an explosive game here. And you saw that. But I've been high on Josh Allen. We all know that. I think he'll be absolutely fine, just like you said. He was clunky, but you did see where there's real potential for his talent. Whereas on the other side of the ball, they said Sam Darnold and leading into the season and off season was looking much better. I'm not too sure about Sam Darnold, but John Brown, who the Bills picked up from Baltimore in the offseason, 7 for 123 and a TD. He actually looked good, and that's something for me because one of the big things about Allen, and not just his legs, he's got a cannon. Yep. Okay, where he suffers may be his accuracy a little bit,
sure,
but he's got a cannon. If you have a guy that can take the top off like Brown, well, there you go.
He's clearly the favorite target.
Yep. And then we saw the backfield. I think the whole thing with the defense is they just kind of need to get their sea legs under them. Quite frankly, my man Shaq Lawson from Clemson had a sack. They look good. I think they'll continue to get better. We'll talk more about the Patriots later. I thought this was a year that the Buffaloes might be able to at least take one of the 2 games that they play New England. I don't know about that.
Well, the good part is Buffalo progressed throughout the game. The Jets regressed.
Yep.
And that's the takeaway I saw from it.
Yep. So, all right. Well, we'll go right on to the next one, and that was the Washington Redskins traveling to Philadelphia. The Eagles were giving the Redskins 9.5. The over-under was 45.5. I went back because we didn't write it down to listen to the cast, so you didn't actually give an actual prediction. You said 30-somethings to the low teens.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what I have here. So
I cheated.
That would be either which way. It would be Philadelphia covering. We don't know where it would be in the over-under. It would probably over because, 30-something to the low teens. I said 27-6 Philly, so covering and on the under. Final score, surprisingly, actually, 32-27. So Philly did not cover. They blew the over-under. I don't know. It's a wash between you and I on this. We're both it was goofy. But I think what we saw certainly from the Washington side was quite unexpected.
Yep.
One of the things I do want to hit right out the gates was somebody that we talked about in fantasy from the Redskins side that showed up, and I think we have to watch it. But I said that I didn't know who the Redskins had to catch the ball. The Josh Doctson experiment was a failure. They brought in Paul Richardson. They brought in Trey Quinn. They drafted Kelvin Harmon from NC State, and obviously early they drafted Terry McLaurin from Ohio State. So that was the guy I said, if anybody was maybe someone to keep an eye on, not just from a fantasy perspective. He had an awesome day. Awesome. 5 for 125 and a touchdown. It wasn't just that. It looked like he and Keenum had a little bit of a connection. It looked like he had been there before for a rookie to come in and do that. I know Hollywood Brown had a phenomenal day, but this guy, he was kind of straight running down the field. This guy was running a little bit on the route tree, some posts, and some slants, some in, and he looked real good. So that was again. It was I didn't. The game started out 10-0 in the first quarter, Redskins. At half, it's 20-7 Redskins.
Yep.
Again, in Philly. And bye-bye Nick Foles. We'll talk about that situation in Jacksonville in a little bit. So officially the Carson Wentz show. And, in the first half, it didn't look good for him. It just didn't. Now, from their side of the ball, I mean, I still heavy workload for Darren Sproles early. The guy they drafted, number 26, Miles Sanders, eventually took most of the carries with 11. But early, you didn't see him get a lot, and just that little old guy in Darren Sproles still got something in the tank, man. He was averaging 5+ yards on his carries. So, I just got to tip my hat to that. That's awesome. I mean, I know it's hard to be an old quarterback, but to be running backs, their life expectancy. The thing about him is he's never really been like the lead, carry the load back. So it's still amazing. From the back to the Redskins side of the ball, you go ahead. You talk. I'm going to eat up all of it. We know what's going on with Washington. Wait. Yes, go.
Well, I guess what I would say is we saw a Case Keenum performance indicative of his year he had in Minnesota, which he's always been known for that. He can come out. I will say this, based off my projection, if I took it halfway through the second quarter, through the rest of the game, it was what I expected to see. Mm-hmm. I personally thought Philadelphia was asleep watching them play. I mean,
offenses take more time early in the year to get going.
Yeah, but they just Philadelphia, and even defensively, they were asleep. I mean, one of the big plays to McLaren was it was like they weren't even covering him. Yeah. So I think we saw some of that. Then you saw Philadelphia turn it on, which is how they came back and won this game. So like from what I guess will be interesting for the Redskins moving forward is Geis went down in the game. He had a pretty ineffective game on the ground with 10 carries for 18 yards before he hurt his knee. He's out for at least, I think that initially they're saying a few weeks is best case scenario. So it's still up in the air. It is his other knee. He did catch the ball a little bit. Remember that Adrian Peterson was not active for this game, so
but
Chris
he was
Thompson
a healthy scratch.
Was healthy, so but he was not. But he was not active, so Chris Thompson had to take over. Chris Thompson was targeted 10 times in the passing game, which is not surprising. He has been a third down back for them for several years now.
That's his role, and I've heard him speak before. He knows it's his role, and he likes that's his role.
There is a debate now, though, and then, so this is what I guess we have to watch out for, because if you'll remember last year, Adrian Peterson came in and ran. He kind of found the fountain of youth and ran really well last year when Geis went down. Is he the guy? And there's talk whether it's how split these carries are going to be, and is Chris Thompson going to get a little bit of a lead on this because he can catch out of the backfield? And again, we got to see what kind of legs Adrian Peterson still has left in him. So that's kind of where the Redskins are at. It doesn't surprise me to see Keenum go off. I wouldn't have thought in this game, I would have thought the Eagles would have come out with a little bit of an edge, and they didn't. They came out very flat. They did play well in the second half. You can see, Carson Wentz ended up 28-39 for 313 and 3 touchdowns. That is not a bad performance from him. Didn't do really much on the ground, which is probably a smart thing. With his injury history, they don't want to do that. Like you said, what I think is important to note, and I kind of knew this. I just had this feeling this was the case. But Miles Sanders gets the highest touches rushing the ball, but then Sproles getting number 2. So Jordan Howard was not able to get in the flow of the game. Some of that was the fact that they were behind, and he's not a pass-catching back. So kind of look to see how they spread the carries around. A guy that I will tell you, this is something I like about their passing offense, and I'll let you wrap
Who's
up.
Passing offense?
Is the Eagles.
Okay.
Is they're kind of really well-balanced here. Deshaun Jackson had a day, and I'm not expecting this to be a one-hit wonder. He's certainly, with the type of receiver he is and his age, he's going to have some days where he's not as visible. But if you look at it, this is a guy that's been, even when he was in Tampa and in Philadelphia before, he's your long ball guy. He's maybe not normally going to get the most amount of catches, but if he has a day where he can get over the top on you, he will score. he did get over the top. He did get catches. He was 8 for 154 and 2 touchdowns. So they got that deep threat, and we already know about Alshon Jeffrey, who's a hands receiver, who can play the intermediate routes, will make tough catches. And then you got Zach Ertz at tight end, who was pretty much kind of
ineffective because we know him to be Wentz's favorite target.
Right, and and he's getting the look.
Listen, man.
They got a good balance in that going out.
That's the word, balance. I mean, like, I got to be honest, and I like Alshon. He's getting up there. He didn't go crazy, 5 for 49. He did have a TD, but he, too, looked good. Ertz kind of didn't, but maybe they took him out of the game. But I attribute a lot of that is Deshaun Jackson. He was on the plays that they were throwing to Jeffrey, looked like he had a yard or two cushion, like he was getting open because they were having problems with Jackson. And if they're able to play that balance throughout the year with that receiving core, and then whatever they figure out with Sanders and Sproles and what have you,
Peterson,
that's where they're going to be. And if their defense is on track, that's how the Eagles are strong.
Peterson's going to know how to adjust throughout the game. And so the fact is you may see their targets mix throughout the season depending upon how defenses play them. The trouble everyone's going to have is it's going to be a pick your poison. And that's going to be very interesting.
Yep. So one thing that I need to just kind of break in between the next game, which is going to be Tennessee and Cleveland. I forgot to mention this with the Jets game because you were talking receivers. Quincy Enunwa is now out for the season with a neck injury. So
second neck injury.
So that could be it for him. Yep. So I say that to say I still think Robbie Anderson's number one. We've talked about the trouble he'll have with the cornerback matchup he's got to face pretty much the entire season. But I thought it was at least good to see what's his nuts? Jamison Crowder, show up and perform a little bit because they're going to need it. So anyways, I digress. As I call.
All right, tell us how we did against Tennessee and Cleveland. I know I did not do well.
So the Tennessee Titans were traveling to the Dog Pound. Cleveland was giving the Titans 5.5. The over-under was a 46.5. Dave picked Cleveland 27-10 to cover, but be under the spread. And I picked Cleveland 42-14 to cover and be over the spread. So, I got the over. We were wrong on all levels everywhere else. This, honestly, I know that the college football score of the Baltimore game versus Miami, there was, it really makes you open your eyes when you see that in the NFL. But I think this could have been the shocker of the weekend. There's all this hype about Cleveland. And I get it. I mean, they've had very high draft picks for eons, so it's about time that they've got like every position covered with a number one pick. Yep. And they do have weapons. Their GM has, I think, been very aggressive, but not stupid. And they got.
He's well respected. Their GM.
He is. I got to say, as a Giants fan, we've. With us bringing in Gettleman, and we could have had our hands on him. I don't know, but this was very surprising. They with all the weapons, Njoku, OBJ, Landry, Chubb, Baker Mayfield, the offensive line. Even though they did get rid of Zeitler to us in that trade, good defensively. Again, they did get rid of Jabril Peppers to us, but they have dudes, and it wasn't good. Now, understand that, at the end of the first quarter, it was 6-3 Cleveland. Okay.
Yep.
What I didn't understand is right out the first snap, it was all on Baker. I get that he's the captain there. But, Chubb, I don't think that first series, they went 3 and out. He didn't see one, there was not one rush on the first series. Now, I don't think we were super high on Tennessee, but if you look back to last year, especially by the end of the year, their defense wasn't awesome, but they weren't a sieve. And so I don't know. We talked about it in the fantasy cast. Chubb was my keeper, so obviously I was disappointed. But I think that had a lot to do because they never balanced themselves out early, and Tennessee just got after Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
But
here's what I saw. They did what I expected them to do in this sense. I expected them to want to show out for the crowd with all the hype. They wanted to show off all their new toys. But, and this is to your point, when it wasn't working, you have to get back to some bread and butter football. It wasn't out of hand, and Tennessee played tremendously on defense. What do you have, 3 picks, I think, in that game, if I remember correctly,
Yep.
Mr. Mayfield? Yep. And the whole point was they never changed the game plan.
He didn't break 300 yards either with all those weapons.
No, but he kept throwing it to the other team.
38 attempts.
He threw it to the other team the whole time. So this is what I saw was the play calling was atrocious. They put their defense in bad situations. Their defense didn't play well on top of that. Where I was really wrong is in what I see out of Tennessee. But, I mean, Cleveland, talk about – I bought the hype. I'm off the train already. I'm not saying that this team can't recover, but where I was baffled was by the play calling. When your quarterback clearly is not having a strong day, you start running the ball. Run the ball.
Listen.
You didn't run the ball.
Listen, and Tennessee had the ball much more than Cleveland did. See if you can pull up a time of possession.
It was even, but it wasn't even for most of the game.
Right,
it was a lot at the end.
So here's the thing. Chubb had only 17 carries. I'm serious when I say only. I expect him to be in the 25 carry a week range. That's where he should be, okay? If they have that many weapons, Baker should, and that great defense, Baker should still be able to get off about 38 to 40 attempts, okay? But Chubb was averaging, he had 75 yards. He didn't score four and a half yards a carry. It should have been, in this game, 32 attempts for Baker and 25 carries for Chubb. Yeah. At least 34 and 23 or something like that, okay? Because, that might have changed it, but right out the gate, it wasn't like that. Now, you can sense the frustration.
Well,
OBJ was, Landry actually kind of looked the best, and Njoku had a touchdown. I'll
say this. This is the thing about Baker Mayfield, okay? Just prepare yourself for this in the NFL, and this is why his coaching is going to be so important early on in his career. He has the Brett Favre gunslinger gene. He doesn't have the resume that Favre had. And understand, Brett Favre's thrown for millions of yards and lots of touchdowns. Brett Favre also has thrown for a lot of interceptions.
Yes.
Sometimes your quarterback, and I'm not comparing him to Brett Favre from a potential perspective. He's got a long way to go to get in that category, but
the mentality
is there.
That, like you said, that cowboy gunslinger.
Right, and you as a coach, particularly in the NFL and especially with a young quarterback, need to rein that in. And we didn't see any of that. It's like they let him. It's like watching a hitter go like 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts.
And nobody giving him a talking to.
Yeah, it's just they let this watching it play over and over again.
That's on point, man.
And then here's going to be the problem with this, and this is what everybody said: is could all these large egos live together? That was a question with Cleveland going in, and can this quarterback, because you got strong egos outside of the quarterback, obviously, in Beckham, Landry doesn't come without any baggage with him either. And so then the point is, so if you go out and lay another egg in the next game, and you're playing a Jets team that's got similar concerns, probably not as much talent, but similar concerns, you go out and lay an egg, does division start to happen in this locker room? And again, you don't want to, I'm not trying to prognosticate that, but the point simply remains, like, if they would have taken some of this away from them, take some of the pressure off of them, you had a chance to make this more of a game. But we're talking a lot about Cleveland and the disappointment. I got to give it to Tennessee. Tennessee's defense was lights out in this game.
Yep.
They clearly confused this kid. they had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, because nobody was really giving them a shot in this game, me included.
9.5 is a big give in the NFL.
Yeah, and they showed us something, and this is why you always get to those, and this is what you love about every NFL season is there are these surprises, these surprise teams. And now you're talking about, if you think about the division that they're in, you've got a Jacksonville team that lost and, obviously has quarterback issues.
Gone for a minute.
You got Indianapolis, while I still think people were a little more down on them than they should have been, still lost, certainly a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Houston.
And then you got Houston. They've got flaws. They've got talent, but they've got flaws. So now all of a sudden,
defensively,
you can see, this starting to unfold and just, is this the potential? Like, is this our team that's going to surprise us this year and go from worst to first? Again, it's one game.
Yeah.
But man, they punched Cleveland in the nose and then kicked them while they were down.
Well, here's the thing. We had talked about Mariota. We think that we're none that impressed with the guy. Probably a great dude, but I just don't know that he's an NFL quarterback because that guy also needs to be a leader, and this kid's quiet. You might be able to do that in college and let a defensive lineman or a running back take that role, but you can't really do it in the NFL. He was 14 of 24 for 248. He did have 3 TDs, and I saw what I saw a couple years ago with him. Now that his favorite dude is healthy and back, Mr. Delaney Walker, he was his guy. He had the most receptions, 5 for 55, and 2 of those TDs. Fantasy football, yes.
Yeah,
you are more than welcome to get rid of O.J. Howard for Delaney Walker. I would do that in a second.
Why O.J.?
Go ahead and get rid of Vance McDonald for Delaney Walker.
Why him?
Because that's just what Mariota does, man. He that's his guy. Now, we did see another rookie show up in A.J. Brown. We talked about him in the college cast, about the Ole Miss receivers.
Sure.
And we downplayed his counterpart, DK Metcalf, that we'll talk about in the next cast with the later games for Seattle, because we were wrong there. But AJ was good, 3 for 100 yards, no TDs, but he was averaging 33 yards, and he's solid. I think I said it then. He's much like an Anquan Bolden type guy. He's just solid. Go ahead. I'll let you speak on what you said about their running game.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Derrick Henry, here's another example of a guy that didn't get out of the blocks fast with this team, splitting carries. Was it Damian Lewis, right?
Deion Lewis.
Or Deion Lewis, sorry.
They brought him in.
But was that where he was at? Was Deion Lewis there when Henry got drafted? Because Henry was splitting early on.
No.
Who am I thinking of? There was someone else.
It was,
there.
Who was it? Fred, it was the guy from Jackson. Thomas? Was it? Fred Thomas?
So
Fred?
No, not Fragile Fred. He was already out of the league. But anyway, the point is, this is a guy that he was probably the last one in Alabama that had heavy miles on his tires coming out of college, and then started splitting carries, never really got, those true carries in the second half of last year, kind of took off. It was great to see him. He ran 19 for 84 and a touchdown, but he also had, which is not part of his arsenal, generally speaking, 1 catch for 75 yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland defense, where were you? But here's the whole thing: this is a team that's playing within the tools that it has. Health will be critical, as you mentioned, like a Delaney Walker who can still get it done. You got to protect Mariota with the running game. I think in this, which they did, they got to create some turnovers. But I think overall this is a good mixture for a team, and I think you got a Cleveland team that has a lot more questions than answers right now, and so how they rebound on Monday night against the Jets, I'm gonna watch. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I'll be watching.
Good football. Even though that Jets game was a dub, but it's still good.
Yep.
Early in the season, we're all watching. Last game, the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kansas City was only giving Jacksonville 3.5, and that's respect to Jacksonville's defense. The over-under was 51.5. Dave, you said 31-21 KC, so they would cover and go over. I said 38-17 KC, so they would cover and go over. Final score, 40-26 KC. So they covered and they went over. And let's see. It looks like you were closer, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess we're both about the same.
Yeah, I mean, this game, some things played out that I expected to play out. Obviously, the big news in the game was the injury front, was 2 injuries. Nick Foles getting knocked out. I believe it was after he scored the touchdown pass. That was pretty early in the game.
Yeah. He was looking a little shaky, and then it did look like he was he's Nick Foles.
Yeah. And, I certainly had a little injury scare with Pat Mahomes as my quarterback. He had a little ankle twist, but it didn't end up being a big deal. But Tyreek Hill, we talked a lot about the fact that he was going to get dragged around by Jalen Ramsey in this game. And Jalen Ramsey is no softy when it comes to tackling, and I never want to see anybody get hurt. It wasn't a vicious hit. It was the way he landed. But Tyreek Hill now out 4 to 6 weeks, shoulder injury.
And Foles, is it a season? I mean, they're both the same. They were, they said earlier, it was clavicle for Foles, collarbone.
I think
Hill. It's the same thing.
They IR'd him,
thing.
But I think he's an IR with an eligible to return is what I think I saw.
Yes, I
did
see that.
So, certainly losing your quarterback was a big deal. I think that's why I think one of the things we talked about was Sammy Watkins going off. He became the primary target.
Sammy!
Yeah, and you had Kelsey get his targets, but he only caught 3 passes, and thanks to Pat Mahomes for throwing his no look into the seats on me on that, could have had another touchdown. But Mahomes was excellent out of the gate. Finished 25 of 33 for 378 and 3 touchdowns. I believe he had all 3 touchdowns was it all in the first half, or did he get one in the beginning of the third quarter? But this was a game where once Foles got hurt, the complexion of the game changed. But I will say, with the complexion of the game changing, I was impressed by Minshew coming in there. I thought he played tough. I thought, he went 22 he went 22 of 25 for 275. He did have a pick, but he threw 2 touchdown passes.
Again,
I thought he had a good game.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. That was mostly in the second half.
Yeah, he played what I saw, and I heard this from a scout someone talking about a scout had looked at him and said the kid just plays fearless, and he looked fearless. He did not look concerned. I think. Listen, this team the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to score points this year because their defense is not very good.
They're not.
But that being said, he got some work from Leonard Fournette, but he didn't get a lot of help on the running game overall. So he had to go out there and do it. I thought he kept the game respectable, especially given the fact, the Chiefs at one point were up, I want to say like 30-13. Yeah, 30-13 at the end of the third quarter. Yep. So, he came back and threw well in the fourth quarter.
In a bad situation against the good, the most potent offense in the NFL.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a kind of game, it's kind of like an offense going up against the Bears defense, for example. Even good offenses, you expect them to have some overall regression to their averages. I think with Kansas City, it's kind of the other way. Like, you're going to expect Kansas City to score points. Can you keep them under some level of control and roll with them is how you're going to want to play them. So, Jacksonville, again, I thought they did okay with what they had. I would have liked to seen a little bit more out of the running game early on to try to control the clock. But
Fournette only had 13 carries, for 66 yards. Not a bad average, 5 yards carry. He did catch the ball 4 times for 28 yards. But, they brought in Chris Conley from Kansas City. He led the receiving corps with receptions. Obviously, Minshew probably got some time with him when he came in. Dede Westbrook was the next in line with 5. He had a touchdown. I think a lot of people expected more out of him, especially from a fantasy perspective. The rookie, the second-year guy from LSU that we had spoke on, him being somebody to watch out for, was DJ Chark. He only had 4 receptions, but he went for $146 in the TD.
Was that the TD where Foles got hurt? It might have been.
I think so. Yeah, but that's a no fluke. I think he's with this, especially with Minshew in there slinging the ball around, coming out of the Mike Leach, mad scientist, buddy.
Yep.
He coached up this kid. Who knew about him at all, really, till his senior year at Washington State?
Yep.
That's a good coach there,
Yep.
and that's part of his fearlessness because nobody knew about him. It was like,
Yep.
well, what have I got to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say this, given the big injuries that both teams took in this game, it doesn't really, neither one of them kind of changed my forecast or my outlook on the team because we saw Sammy Watkins was already having a good day before Tyreek Hill went out.
That's right.
It's just only going to show. I mean, they need that complimentary receiver to go with Kelsey. They got him. Sammy Watkins looks fast.
I
He
think
looks
the
strong.
kid they drafted, Mecole Hardman
Hardman.
of Georgia, people thought of him as a sleeper just because you want to get a piece of this offense in fantasy. He's definitely going to get more time. I think he only got like a few snaps, not a lot. Actually, I think he might have gotten more than we think, maybe like 40% of the snaps. But yeah, I think now that Hill's out, you're definitely going to see. So, and that also is something, you watch Sammy because now he's gonna get I don't know. I still think you could see top corners coming down on Kelsey now and putting Sammy on
yeah. I
1-on-1,
mean,
but
it would change the complexion, but let me just say this. Sammy looked every bit of the receiver they paid him for last year. You could say he didn't, but the question then too was they had so many weapons all year. How does that play? So I think this is an offense that doesn't miss a beat.
yeah, the running game for Kansas City surprised me.
Yeah.
And mind you, Andy Reid did say in the preseason that it was going to be a running back by committee. He's done it before,
Sure.
which he has, and but this was before McCoy came in. That was when they had picked up Hyde, and then they dumped him.
Yep.
And we'll talk about him later with Houston, but and then they recently picked up LaShawn McCoy from Buffalo, who had almost as many touches as Damian Williams. He had 10 and Williams had 13, and he got the better. He had 81 yards and Williams had 26. Now, Williams did have 6 receptions for 39. McCoy only had 1 for 12, but I'll be honest, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect LaShawn McCoy. And not a lot of people are saying he looked faster and quicker than Williams. I disagree. But he did look faster and quicker than
He has
recently. Yes.
Yeah.
So that surprised me a little bit with that game. Nonetheless, the Chiefs pull out the win. It's the first game of the year, so. The Minshew thing, I think, is the biggest takeaway. That could be interesting over there.
Yep.
Especially, again, they have a good defense. They got 40 on them, but it's KC. So when they face, you touched on their division. They may have their defense can keep them in that division, and if they have something on offense with Minshew at the helm, we'll see. They have a running back and they have some weapons on the outside, and we'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's going to wrap it up for the early games from last Sunday. We're going to take a minute, and then we'll get this up and running soon. And then we will have a second one that will touch on the late games, the Sunday night game, and the 2 games from Monday night. We'll talk to you again soon.
Life's the same, I'm moving in stereo. Life's the same, except for my shoes. Life's the same, you're shaking like tremolo. Life's the same, it's all inside you.